Edmund Kemper shot his grandparents at the age of only 15, killed young women, raped their dead body, killed his mother, raped her dead body, and did oral sex with her head. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Psych Talk with Anna in the True Crime Psychology series. In today's episode, I will talk about one of the most chilling stories of murderers. I will talk about Edmund Kemper, the so-called co-ed killer who murdered 6 young college education students, his grandparents, his mother, and the best friend of his mother. I will talk about his diagnosis, the reason why he's able to get a lot of empathy from people, and whether or not he was made that way or born that way. So let's get into it. So Edmund Kemper started torturing and killing animals at a very young age, and that's a really bad sign because all psychopaths, they start by killing or torturing animals before moving to people. And so that was already a red flag. And then at the age of 15, he was left alone with the grandparents. And he mentioned in many different interviews that he didn't have a good relationship with the mother. He actually hated the mother. And he never felt loved by the mother, and she was a troubled woman. The grandmother reminded him a lot of the mother. And so he ended up shooting her, and then shooting the grandfather when he came back home before he could see the dead body of the wife, the grandmother of Ed Kemper. And at that point, he was actually institutionalized. And instead of diagnosing him with psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which is probably the reason why he later on at the age of 20 or 1920, he was released from that institute. What happened in that institute? Was he actually cured? Or he learned better how to hide his darkest thoughts? There were hundreds of murderers, men who killed women, men who raped women. And so not only he was able to learn from them, but the psychologists in that institute assigned him a role. What they did was making him an assistant to help him out. And so he was able to have access to all the files of all the murders that were in that institute. And the reason why the psychologists did that is because he showed an interest in helping out. And he seemed very productive and very intelligent. His IQ score was actually very high. And so the psychologists trusted him, and they didn't think that he actually had a sinister mind. The whole story happened in the 1970s, and so back then maybe psychologists were more easily manipulated because they were maybe more believing, and so he was able to manipulate them into believing that he was actually a good person, that he had a psychotic breakdown when he murdered his grandparents. In reality, he was clearly a psychopath. The psychologists were so naive to give him the files of the other clients. He could learn from them. He learned what the psychologists wanted to hear. He learned what other people wanted to hear from him. It is insane how this guy is able to get empathy from people, even though when people are aware of his heinous acts. I bet that you are going to feel empathy for this guy, and you are going to think, oh, but I feel him. The only reason why he's like this is because of the way he was treated. It's because of the trauma that he had to endure when he was younger. All of us have been through some sort of trauma, some more than others, but not all of us are killers. And that's where biology and environment come in, right? Because what if he didn't have that traumatic childhood? Do you think he will still end up in the same situation, in the same position? Or do you think he will be a totally different person? So I'm not sure how people are able to forget all of that when hearing his story. For some reason, he's so smart and great at manipulation that he will be able to trick you into having empathy for him. And in one of these interviews that I actually reviewed, one of the investigators actually said that he liked him. He's a cool person. He's nice to talk to. And then I'm thinking, you're a fool, because he manipulated you. He literally was able to make you feel empathy for him. Right now, let's go and review one of the interviews that he has done.
And I'm picking up young women, and I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first, there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides. This fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me. It was like drugs. It was like alcohol. A little isn't enough. At first it is. And as you adjust to that psychologically and physically, you take more and more and more. It's the same process. So it finally came down to the thing of, do I dare bring this gun out? Already realizing if that gun comes out, something has to happen. It was going to happen. I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun.
It's very interesting that he says that he actually, before acting this out, he thought about it and he had fantasies about it and he rehearsed the whole thing before actually acting it out. And that's how many psychopaths or people who end up committing murders or school shooting do, which is dwelling on the idea of committing the murder or the shooting or whatever it is. It's the same thing with suicide. A person doesn't just suddenly commit suicide, but they dwell with the idea of death or suicide, and they think about how they are going to do it, where they're going to do it. One thing that I want you to know about psychopaths is that they never take accountability for their heinous acts. They never do. It's always because of someone else. It's because of society. It's because of the mother. It's because of the way they were raised. It's never their fault. The only individual that I've seen actually taking accountability for his actions was Jeffrey Dahmer. But I believe that he did that to actually get even more empathy from the audience. It was a way to manipulate people. But you never know.
I said, she's got to die, and I've got to die, or girls like that are going to die. And that's when I decided I'm going to murder my mother. I knew a week before she died, I was going to kill her. And she went out to a party, she got soused, she came home, went to sleep. I was woken up by that, came out. I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback, as many thousands of nights before. And she said, oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now. Shit. And I looked at her, I said, no. I said, good night. And I knew I was going to kill her, you know?
I don't know if these are crocodile tears. You can see that he's covering his mouth and maybe he's laughing when fake crying. Again, let's remember that he's incredibly smart and trying to get empathy from people. So, let's go.
And it's so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly. It hurts. Because I'm not a lizard, I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. See? I came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. This is one of our arguments. And I cut off her head. And I humiliated her corpse. So there. You know? 6 young women dead because of the way she raises her son.
6 young women death because of the way she raises her son. And again, this is the fact that he's not taking accountability for his actions. Oh, you treated me that way, you raised me that way, therefore I am like this. if we all acted based on those rules, the world wouldn't even function, society wouldn't function. One thing that I forgot to mention that I wanted to mention before is that the way those girls were murdered is that basically they were doing hitchhiking, and he will obviously pick them up and then never drive them to the destination where they were supposed to go, and then obviously stop somewhere and then shoot them and kill them and then rape their corpse. Another thing also to mention is that he clearly hates women because of the relationship he had with the mother. And one of the things that the mother used to do when he was little or young, she would lock him up in the closet because she was scared that he was gonna rape the sisters. And so she felt that probably he wasn't normal since a very young age and there was something off. Now, of course, she was a troubled woman, as he says, and also as the father of Kemper says, she was a troubled woman. But maybe there's some truth to that, and maybe she felt that uneasiness around him and she felt that he wasn't safe to be around. So if you're able to watch more of that interview, you can see how easy it is to feel empathy or sympathy for him because of what he has been through at a young age. But let's not forget that he actually murdered women, raped their dead body, killed and tortured animals, killed his grandparents, and killed his mother and the best friend of his mother. So that's what people seem to forget when listening to him talk. Same thing goes for the investigators, the policemen, and that's kind of chilling. So how did the police actually end up discovering all of these murders? He actually confessed to the police that he murdered his mother, and then he confessed all of the other murders that he had done. So why did the psychologist initially diagnose him with paranoid schizophrenia? It's because he told them that he was extremely paranoid, that people were out to get him. But later, even in the institute, they discovered that he didn't have hallucinations, he didn't have delusions, he just didn't have schizophrenic symptoms at all. And even in the institute, they didn't diagnose him right away with psychopathy. What they did was they just thought that he had a personality trait disturbance, the passive-aggressive type. One thing I wanted to mention is that in clinical psychology, we diagnose people that lack empathy, who end up murdering other people, who lack remorse, with antisocial personality disorder. But in criminology, it's psychopathy or sociopathy. And I wanted to read to you the diagnostic criteria of antisocial personality disorder so that you can get a better idea of how it looks like and how good with words he was to actually make you feel empathy when watching his interviews. If you're interested in knowing the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy, check out this video that I made about that. This is the DSM-5, the revised version, and is where we have all the diagnoses, and I will read to you the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder. Okay, so a pervasive pattern of disregard for any violation of the rights of others, occurring since age 15 years, as indicated by 3 or the more of the following. Age 15 is when he murdered his grandparents, by the way. Okay, 1. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness, as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Impulsivity, or failure to plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Reckless disregard for safety or of self or others. Consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. Lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. The individual is at least age 18 years. There is evidence of conduct disorder with onset before age 15. Well, I believe he did have evidence of conduct disorder as he was torturing and killing animals at a very young age. The occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. So again, he clearly has psychopathy, and that's his final diagnosis. Now, was it both genetic and environment? Because as we know, he grew up in a very traumatic household. Well, I believe, of course, it's both. But as you can see, many psychologists will agree that people are actually born psychopaths. You can see that when you do MRI to psychopaths, their brain structure is different. They have an underdeveloped amygdala, which is literally for feeling empathy and being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and other people's positions. And they have an underactivated amygdala, a smaller amygdala, which is a sign that they can't feel what other people are feeling. And they see people as objects, mere objects. They just don't see them as people. That's how they're able to do these heinous acts. It's like, this is an object. Let's say I drop it on me like this. That's how they see people. They see them as inanimated objects that don't have feelings. They serve them, and that's it. That's how they see people. One of the chilling sentences that he says in this interview, I will read it to you, and that literally explains everything about how his mind works. He says, "I killed her. I never hit her, but I killed her," which literally tells you everything about this person that you need to know. So he says, "I killed her, but I never hit her." Like, if that makes it better. Yeah, that's how crazy that whole story is, and how manipulative and articulated and smart he was, that he was able to get women into his car and eventually kill them. One thing that I wanted to mention before closing this chapter is that women are born with a strong gut feeling that we know when we feel unsafe around a guy, and we have to follow that gut feeling because it literally can save us from being hurt and murdered. And I wonder if these young women actually felt that in their gut, but then disregarded it because they didn't have any fact to actually feel that way, because he was just being a nice guy. He was like picking them up, and then he was supposed to drive them where they were, supposed to go. And so that's one of the mistakes that women make, is that because we don't have any actual facts to call out a person, or that that person has something off, then we just disregard our gut feeling. The thing is, they will actually reveal who they really are. Just give them time. And that's why we don't have to waste our time by finding facts or things that they did to then say, "Oh yeah, they're kind of nuts." No, we don't have to wait for that. We just have to go flee and leave them alone. Okay, so this is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked it, put a like, subscribe to my channel, and if you like this content, please let me know which serial killer you would like me to review. Put it down in the comment section below, and thank you for watching.